Welcome back to the Weekend Journal here on News Talk 580. I'm Jack O'Malley, and as you know, this show is all about Michigan, things that are happening in Michigan, legislation in Michigan, and one of the things that we've been talking about since 2015, probably before, but 2015 when we had the last big dust up about roads. How do we repair, how do we fix our roads? And one of the things that I've felt is, as citizens, we hear about from the governor, we hear from MDOT, we hear about a bond that's $3 billion, but all that money just goes to the state roads. 92% of the roads in the state of Michigan are local roads, right? So that's what I want to talk about today. Educate you, inform you a little bit about what it takes to fix our local roads. And with me to do that, we'll start with the local guy first. Those state guys, we'll let him come in second. Bert Thompson is the Antrim County Road Manager. He joins us. Bert, good morning.
Good morning.
And on the phone, somewhere in Lansing or in some bunker somewhere, is Ed Niola, Chief Deputy and Legislative Director of the County Road Association. He's a good guy. Ed, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Are you there?
Thank you, Representative. It's good to hear from you again.
Yeah. So, all right, here we are talking about roads. Any general comments? I have a few questions that we'll get to, but as you look at the state here and budgets that are coming out, the governor in really the last part of her tenure has not been able to fix the roads. In my own opinion is she hasn't tried that hard. But would you agree our state has 92% of the roads are local and they don't get the same love that the state roads do?
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, we
I could. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's been decades and decades of underfunding, and not just the locals. It's entire transportation in Michigan, and it's just something that we need to really look at and address.
Ed, what do you think?
Jack, I've been around since 1972, I think, is when I started working at MDOT. So I've seen all of the disasters, all of the underfunding that you could possibly imagine, and we are in dire straits right now. And the only way to dig out of this hole is to put up some adequate funding that's going to help not only the Department of Transportation, but those local road agencies like Antrim, et cetera.
Yeah. So one of the things that gets picked on all the time is PA 51, Public Act 51 of 1951. What I've told my audience in the past when we've talked about it is everything I heard, everything I saw, it's been amended over the decades, so it's not some old verbiage that's never been touched. And basically, it's like a Plinko board. You put the money in and it filters its way down. Is PA 51 one of the problems, or is it adequate?
I think it's adequate.
Robert?
Yeah, it's been amended over the years, like you mentioned. It's been tweaked to make it more fair, and to try and start over would be a major hurdle to try and come up with something that's fair to everyone, which you'll never do.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody that wins, somebody that loses a little. But over the years, I think we've tweaked Act 51 to accommodate just about anything that we can think of. And I'm sure we'll do more amendments in the future to add different things that may come up.
Sure. Ed?
The legislation has been super flexible with regards to how we distribute that money. Everybody insists that it's unfair or that it's not adequate or it's not being fairly distributed. That is a misnomer. This piece of legislation was well thought out by some crafty legislators, before you, Jack, and they came up with the most fair way to distribute the money that's available or the money that's collected. The problem is the money that's collected. We have been under collecting for decades,
Sure.
at least 3 or 4 decades, to be honest with you. And that's where the problem begins. I know we're going to ask the people for a lot more, but at the end of the day, it's going to take us a while to get out of this hole, and it's going to take a substantial increase.
Well, one of the things, and then we'll move on from PA 51, correct me if I'm wrong, if your thoughts, one of the thing that people don't like, especially if they're downstate folks, is lane miles versus road miles. because they say our 4 lanes of our 1 mile 4-lane road should be counted as 4 miles. And that would just tip the cart upside down, wouldn't it?
Oh, definitely. It would change the formula drastically.
Yeah. All right. So as it stands, it stands. Now, the other thing is when we talk about the state money, and Bert and I were chatting, I've used this before. Oakland County, $130 million last year. And what was Antrim County?
Under $7.5 million.
So I think 7.5. We'll say 7.5 million. 7.5 million versus 130 million. I think that's fair. So there's been discussion about 45-cent gas tax that went by the wayside. There's talk of $2.5 to $3.5 billion into roads. What do you guys think is the magic number? Can I put you on the spot? Well, we'll let Ed go first.
Yeah, I can only tell you that we identified what our needs were at the county level, and that was a little over $2 billion. The department has come up with a little over $2 billion. So right off the bat, without even including the cities and the villages, we're starting at $4 billion that we're short. So is it plausible? Is it feasible? Probably not. In all honesty, and I'll put my political hat on here in Lansing, because the fact is that is just a number that's not really probably attainable. What is attainable and what's been called attainable by both the Speaker of the House, Speaker Hall, and the Governor Whitmer, is that $3 billion is not out of the question. The cuts, changes, transfers, and maybe some increases of fees or taxes. So based on that concept, it is totally doable. And I think the House legislation that just passed recently is very doable. They're taking corporate income tax and diverting that to roads, and they're removing the sales tax off of fuel and turning into a fuel tax, which is revenue neutral. So if you do it that way, it looks pretty darn good to me, Jack.
All right, Bert, what do you think? You got any thoughts on that, or?
Well, I don't think there's any magic number out there. We go too big, we're going to run into a problem with enough contractors and labor to do the work that we need to do. But let me put it into perspective. Right now, today, I have a $51 million need on the paved road network in Antrim County. If we were to do everything I needed to do today, at today's cost and today's conditions, $51 million. I got a $7.5 million MTF revenue. Even if we double that at $15 million in revenue, I'm still going to be working at that need for a long time to come. And as we make repairs, other roads are going to degrade, and we're going to need to make repairs on those in the future.
Well, that kind of brings me to maybe I know I am no mathlete. All right. Me and numbers aren't always the world's greatest, right? So I see MDOT, and they talk about, well, we need X amount of money to get to 90% good roads. And I think, well, that's nice, but we don't have that kind of money. Or if we do, it's got to go to more than just MDOT's roads. So what if we scale back and say, for the time being, let's get to 70% good and use that extra whatever to fix all or more roads than just the MDOT roads. Is that just kind of goofy thinking on my part, or is that like sort of sensible?
I think it's sensible.
Lower your sight just a little bit for a few years. It's not to say you're going to give up.
I think you're right, Jack. If we would have done this under the Engler administration in '97 when he did his 4-cent gas tax, I mean, we could have gotten a long ways, and indexing the fuel tax, we could have gotten a long ways to getting to some of those goals that you just mentioned, to be honest with you. But at this point, it is a lofty goal by the department, because they could get there, but they can't stay there.
Yeah.
No one can. You need an exorbitant amount of money to stay at 90% good condition.
Well, I got to say one thing, too. I pick on the governor. She had that 45 cents idea. I think MDOT is goofy, too, in a lot of things they say. But I have to say, and I got to point the finger also at my own party, because when I was in the House, I'm chair of transportation. I'm seeing everything that needs to get done. And members of my own party were like, no, we have enough money there. and it's like you don't know what you're talking about. So Republicans are not coming out of this perfectly clean, though I do think a lot of proposals that they're talking about now make sense. But historically speaking, I think some members in my own party were unaware of what the real problem was.
Well, and I think that goes way back, decades back. And I can quote from my father, who was in this business too, many, many years ago when he spoke with Engler, when Engler was in the legislature. And he told my dad then, he said, we can't just raise money and let you have it. We have to have control over this all the time. Mm-hmm. So even back then, it was hands-on and didn't want to give a lot of money away for roads.
It's going to take a while no matter what we do, but I don't know. I just, we are. So let me just say this, or ask you guys. All right, you've been given a wand. What can you do with more money? How do we spread that across the state? Are Michigan roads worse than other states? I know we've got frost freeze and all that, I've heard. But, are we really that bad compared to elsewhere? What are your thoughts?
Well, we're definitely worse than other
if
states.
I can touch here, let me tell you that, Wisconsin and Ohio have been at 30 cents for over 10 years, to be totally honest with you.
And 30 cents
And you wonder why. Yeah, 30 cents a gallon. So you wonder why those other states, our neighboring states, are in such better condition than ours are. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why, Jack, is because they've been investing into their infrastructure system for decades, at least 10 years. Indiana and Illinois have been at 30 cents just recently, not recently, probably 2015, 2016. So they identified the problem and they tried to address it. They're trying to address it. They keep trying to make sure that there's enough money in the pot to take care of all of their infrastructure. And Michigan just got at 30 cents last year. Last year, Jack.
Yeah. Bert, you were going to say?
Yeah, and not to mention, though, all that time that they've had index fuel taxes in other states near us. Back in 2004, we peaked on our revenue with the Michigan Transportation Fund, and then it started going downhill. We were losing revenue every year down until 2010. Then it started to turn around and come back. It wasn't until 2015 did we match 2004 revenues. So we had 10 years of decreasing revenues. Mm-hmm. So we lost a lot of buying power. We were falling behind on road repairs.
Yeah.
The first thing we sacrificed was the roads. Then we sacrificed our equipment, and then we were sacrificing our employees. And we lost. You go to any road commission in the state, we downsized by about a third in that period of time. Mm-hmm. Every one of us. Now we picked a few of those back up, but we have made some improvements in technology and different kinds of vehicles that we can do more with less people. But we had a long period of time. We had a lot of lost revenues, and we were falling behind. So now we're trying to catch up from that, plus decades before of underfunding roads.
Yeah. Ed, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what Bert just said, but at the end of the day, we need to constantly be vigilant on how we spend. And I think if you look at any road commission, there's no waste, there's no efficiencies that are lacking within our road agencies. We're dealing with what's giving to us. And remember, road commissions and road departments do not have taxing authorities. We live and breathe off of what's collected under the fuel tax and the registration fees. Mm-hmm. So assuming that we have a general fund avenue where we can get more revenue if we need it, we don't.
Well, and that brings up just local millage taxes and things. As I remember, and my memory could be a little bit fadey, but the vast majority of local millages are Knuckles North, rural Michigan. Some of these more populated areas that want more money from the state fuel tax, they don't do it. They don't have a local millage. So counties, townships are saying, hey, they go to their voters to say, hey, give us a little bit extra. And where it's happened, I think it works pretty good. The roads look nicer because they get more money.
That's right. And in Antrim County, 15 out of our 15 townships have road millages. Mm-hmm. And we rely heavily on those townships to help make these road improvements. It's generating between $1.5 million and $2 million a year. And that's a lot of work that we can get done. Now, the townships generally select those projects and decide where they want to spend it. It's their money. But we would be much further behind if it wasn't for these local millages. Some counties have a countywide millage, some rely on townships. But you're right. Northern counties pretty much are the ones with the road millages, or the rural counties, I should say.
Yeah.
And at one point in time, there was a talk about, during road funding discussions that we've been having for the 30 years I've been in this bracket, it's always talk about local skin in the game. And I think even our current governor has mentioned we need to have more local skin in the game. We already do.
Yeah.
Our townships are contributing, more than 20% of what we get in MTF. So I don't know how much more skin in the game our locals are willing to put in.
Sure. Hey, by the way, folks, you're just tuning in to the Weekend Journal. The guy on the phone is Ed Niola with the County Road Association. Bert Thompson is the Antrim County Road Manager with us here today. So we've got a couple of more minutes here. Thoughts on anything here? As if you could talk to anybody, people that are listening, in a way, I hate to say it this way, but it is sort of kind of MDOT roads versus local roads, and how we get the money, how we make sure there's enough there. We don't just go out and bond for our state roads. We've got to look at those local roads too. Any last thoughts? We'll start with Bert.
Well, I don't like that bonding thing. We've been paying off bonds for many, many years, haven't we, Ed?
Yep.
and not necessarily are the locals paying for just bonds that they received. Correct. Or any revenue they receive from those bonds. So, I think if we live within our means, we do need to increase revenue somehow. And I think what the House of Representatives has passed is a great plan. I realize we may not get exactly that, but it's a great start, and I think it could go a long ways towards helping all of the roads in Michigan.
Well, before I let Ed jump in, I would add too, what we have to realize, or the legislature has to realize, is somewhere along the line, something's going to have to get cut. And to go back to whoever's getting cut to say, oh, by the way, we're cutting you a little bit here because we need it for roads. That's not something most legislators like to do. So it's going to take a little chutzpah to pass what the Republican legislature is asking. And the governor seems to have sort of kind of smiled on it. So we'll see. Ed, thoughts?
Last thoughts here are the governor and the House Speaker agree on three issues. $3 billion is not an unreachable number. Local roads are important and need to be a priority. And number three, remove the sales tax off of fuel and convert that into a fuel tax that's revenue neutral. So no one will see a difference at the pump, but yet all the revenue, all the tax that's collected at the pump goes to the roads. Those are three common denominators that are really key. The last thing I want your listeners to know is that everything begins and ends in your driveway. And if you don't tell your legislators that that's a key component to putting all that traffic on their primary roads or their major streets or the MDOT system, they're missing the boat. Tell your legislators local roads matter.
Yes, they do. All right.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for being in the fight. Bert, you said 30 years, and I think Ed was there when the Romans built.
We were wearing sandals.
Well, thanks for having me on here, Jack.
Yeah,
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this.
You bet. We could go on forever, because I could also go on. I would love the, why aren't you using rubber in the roads? Why aren't you using? I used to say, look, I'd use coffee grounds if I thought that it actually would make a road last longer. But it's amazing. Everybody's got their own idea. I think, real quick, Michigan does a good job of studying what it takes to make a road, right? We're not a bunch of hacks.
Oh, definitely. And every year they're looking at better or different products to use. MDOT does use the universities for research. So everybody's looking at better ways to do it. But I don't know that we're doing it bad right now.
Correct.
We've been using and specifying the best materials we can, and we're always refining that as we go.
Very good. And what's it cost to do a mile of road? That's kind of the standard line.
The standard answer?
Yeah.
It depends. There's a lot of variables in the cost of a mile of road. So
He's smooth, isn't he, Ed?
Yeah.
should have been in the legislature. Huh?
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Ed Niola, County Road, continue working hard. Bert Thompson, thanks for being on our side up here in the north.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Jack.
You bet. Hey, this is the Weekend Journal on News Talk 580 WTCM. We'll be right back. Stay tuned for more.